here. Lisa is a local citizen, concerned activist for our beach. And I think that's all the new members, people that weren't here the first time. So I'd like to welcome them. Our record chair is not here today, so Maurice is going to handle those activities. And Maurice, if you'd like to get us started.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second meeting of the year. So this is the First Development Council Beach Management Committee meeting for Tuesday, March 1st, 2016. Thank God for the leap day, 9 a.m. So first, call to order. So we're officially in session. Second point of business this morning would be a quorum call. We will need 5 out of 9 members.
Can we hold up 1 minute?
Yes, ma'am.
They voted the wrong one. We shouldn't be on.
There we are. What are we looking for exactly?
Granicus.
What part of the grant is we have a video feed?
Yeah, it's not opening.
Is it because there's 2 of you turned over?
But I thought I closed one. Yeah, let me close.
No, you're the closest one. I'm not even in the manager.
I have
You completely out?
Yeah, I'm out.
No way. It's not a requirement. Code enforcement. Live broadcasting, we'll start doing it this year.
Totally.
The one we're on.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, our audio and video feed, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty. We live feed these meetings through our Granicus system, which goes out through our website. So our camera is working, our microphones are working, but the attachments aren't showing up on the screen like they would for somebody out viewing this remotely. So cameras are working, microphones are working, so we'll carry on with our business. So, back to you, Maurice.
All right, thank you very much. Our next item would be inviting any public comment on the agenda item today. Seeing that we have 3 citizens in the gallery today, so invite any public comment regarding today's agenda. Seeing that there is none, we will move on. We are pleased today to have a presentation on hurricane storm damage reduction. This is from...
We need to step back and do pretty much minutes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. My apologies. First day on the job.
Yeah.
No excuses. Next, we need to approve the minutes. That is my responsibility to ask if there is a motion to approve the minutes as attached, correct, Brian? These would be the minutes from the previous meeting, that's correct? That would be from our board meeting back in January. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So,
So moved. Do I have a second?
second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? So the approval of the minutes has been done. Next we can officially introduce our presenter for today, a gentleman by the name of Matt Tremble, who is a coastal engineer. This will be an update for the committee and for the public on the hurricane storm damage reduction project. So I'm pleased to welcome to the board, Matt Tremble. Matt?
Thank you, Maurice. Everyone, just a real quick update. I think we're all familiar with the HSDR project. From the last meeting, Stacy had forwarded out some project information. Everything was up on the website. Wasn't an assigned homework task, but if you did review the project info, you got any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. But where we are now is the County Commission gave 6 months for the initial easement mail out, and those results are in. We received approximately 50% of the easements went out, were returned. Of that 50%, approximately 90% had signed no, that they were not in favor of the easement in the HSDR project, and about 10% had signed yes. Now we're still working with the Corps on those metrics, looking at the percentages of government-owned property, privately owned property, yeses and nos, in the sense of project length, as well as differentiation amongst the reaches. You know, the project's broken into 5 reaches. So we're developing maps, we're developing tables that will easily show what those numbers are in a easily digestible format. We plan to present those at the March 8th meeting to the County Commission. If that doesn't occur, we'll certainly put out the proper notices, but that's the plan as it is today. So all that information will be made public to you as well as the general public, the standard 2 to 3 days before the meeting, or the Thursday before, I believe it is. And March 8th is a Tuesday, and that's the South End meeting here at the South Walton Annex. That's what we're targeting currently. So with that, if y'all have any questions on the easement or the project itself, I'm all ears.
Questions from the committee? One follow-up, you may have already said this, so thank you, Matt. But would you mind reiterating the implications of the 90% no?
Well, it's really difficult. At this point, it's all in the hands of the County Commission. We were simply tasked with obtaining the easements, or sending the easements out. It was done by American Government Services. They had done title searches. It is a requirement for the Corps of Engineers to obtain those easements. They cannot necessarily go on those private properties without having those easements in place. So it does present a pretty formidable hurdle, but the plan is to present the information to the County Commission and obtain direction from the commissioners as to where they would like to go with the project. And then also the Corps of Engineers, we're anticipating staff will be on hand to answer any specific questions regarding the federal project implications there are. So I cannot say at this point in time, but should all come out in the wash at the March 8th meeting.
Got it.
So,
Did you
yes, sir.
explain what the easement entitles the Corps of Engineers to do?
Yeah, it's all the information is up on the website. You can read the easements, but basically, in a general sense, it's just for the Corps of Engineers to come on that property. It's limited to from the mean high water line to the upland 15-foot contour, reference to a specific datum. Basically, that's the edge of the sand dune. There are very few instances where there isn't a 15-foot contour. It's the seaward edge of the home. Although I've not seen any project design that actually comes to the edge of the home. So it's within that area, and it specifically authorizes the Corps to come on the property for the construction and maintenance of the HSDR project, which is bringing in bulldozers, bringing in pipe, placing the sand, shaping the sand, planting vegetation, installing sand fences, and then the maintenance of that project over the next 50 years. But it is a 50-year easement. It's not in perpetuity. It's tied to the life of the project, which currently is slated at 50 years. And it's just for the court to do that specific work. Now, there has been some concerns expressed by the property owners. Well, does this give the county carte blanche to come on our properties and do whatever they feel? In my opinion, it's no, but that's why we've encouraged the property owners to go and seek out counsel, seek out their own advice as to how their lawyer would interpret that easement. But the general intent is just for the construction and maintenance of the beach project.
Is there a value on this easement? Are the property owners pay anything to sign this easement?
Not at all. No. There's no cost for the recording, the signing. It's just the easement had to be signed and notarized and returned to the county. The county and the Corps of Engineers would be responsible for recording all of those documents through the proper channels.
But it does have a value. I mean,
in a sense that the project could not proceed without the easement, I'd say yes, that would be the value.
So the project, the county, the Corps of Engineers, the TDC could actually pay the homeowners and beachfront owners money for their signature and a yes on this easement. You could pay money.
I could not answer that question. I don't think that has never happened, to my knowledge, of any of the federal projects that we've been involved in, and I don't think the federal government would promote that or want that in any of their projects. It's really, they would like to see the upland homeowners voluntarily sign up for this project, and pretty much it's left at that. I don't think there's any interest in them assigning a monetary value and paying folks for that use of their property. The way the federal government sees it is it's a benefit to the private property owner through storm protection, habitat restoration, increased recreational area. They're providing that benefit to the property owner. I don't think they have any interest in paying for that easement. Just my opinion.
90%. Pretty good number.
It is, and I'll go ahead and say it. We've had a number of documents prepared, feasibility studies that Taylor Engineering has been involved in, going all the way back to Hurricane Opal in 1995. And our beach management strategy has always been beach restoration. We've done a number of studies looking at if the county were to do a dune restoration project, and we've done that. There was a dune restoration project done at Inlet Beach following Hurricane Dennis, I believe it was. But the studies show that you can get storm protection on the order of, I think it's less than a 10-year return interval event from a dune restoration project, whereas constructing a beach restoration project, that's sand in the dunes, extending the width of the beach, raising the elevation of the beach, you can provide protection on the order of a 50 to 100-year storm event. And that was always at the time, there was a lot of support for this project. I want to say in the 2004-2005 timeframe, following Dennis, Ivan, Katrina, Rita. We're all familiar with the 04 and 05 hurricane season. Since I'm not exactly sure what's happened, the federal process has taken a very long time. So if this project does not move forward for whatever reason, our beach management strategy kind of goes away by default. We've not put a whole lot of thought into what may be our plan B. And I'd like to hear, if this question were to come up with the county commissioners, I think we've got a good mix of folks from beach vendors, private property owners, as well as the state park and fire service. It would be very interesting to me, do we have an opinion as a board or as individuals of, if there is a next step, what would we like that next step to be? Do we just want to turn it all over to the property owners and it's on it's their responsibility to protect and preserve and restore that beach property and their properties, or does the county want to have some involvement in that? We all know the beach is extremely important. It's the lifeblood of our local economy here. The beach wasn't even damaged with the oil spill, and just the perception of that damage, did a world of hurt to the local economy. So you can imagine what a Cat 2 or Cat 3 hurricane could potentially do. And I'm never one for promoting scare tactics, but it really is just a matter of time. We've been very fortunate, hadn't had any major storms in the last 10 years, but I've seen Opal. I was here through Opal. I was here through Ivan and Dennis. It's bad times. It's a bad situation. We need to have a plan, whether that be a pre and post storm response plan, or whether that be a full-blown implementation or management strategy. That's what I've always recommended, but I guess I'll...
Is there a plan that's conceivable that does not include the Corps of Engineers?
Yes, we had, I believe, Lisa, you were there about the October presentation last year. We had presented a couple options. We had a good turnout from a lot of local property owners. The county can move forward with their own beach restoration project. The issue is we'll still have to have some form of an easement, and we'll still have to record an erosion control line, that magic line in the sand that kind of divides where state property ends and where private property begins. And that's state property, not county property. But the only major difference is we're not going to have that federal funding support. So the county will be paying for it largely themselves. We'll likely get a little help from the state, but our federal support goes away. And I think it's on the order of 30% of the project will be funded by the federal government. So that potentially would all go away. This was a very wonderful plan. I'll just tell you, Bay County has a federal beach restoration project. Okaloosa County has been trying for about the same time, about 10 years, to get moving on a federal beach project over on their end. Escambia County as well, there's interest in them having a federal project solely for that cost share partnership. You know, that's huge if you can have someone else come up to the table with another $5–10 million, and within a 50-year commitment. And the whole purpose of the HSDR is, after a hurricane, you have a number of folks making disaster recovery claims, FEMA claims. You look back to Hurricane Sandy, there was a number of reports that were done there. The properties that did have beach restoration projects, whether they were federal funded, state funded, or local funded, they did fare much better than the properties that didn't. Having that large dune protected the homes from flooding, protected them from damage, and that's the whole reason that the federal government is interested. If you look at an area like, not meaning to pick on anybody, but a more rural coastline, we have a lot of high value properties, a lot of relatively dense development along the shoreline. There's a lot of value in that, in protecting that. If that resource or that, if those properties were to go away or become damaged, the federal government's looking at paying out a lot of money to enhance it and make those properties whole again. Whereas in a more rural area, they would have no involvement whatsoever. The benefit cost ratio just simply wouldn't be there. Here in Walton, we had a very positive benefit DC ratio. So there was that federal interest, and we were very fortunate. The bad thing is that, you know, it took us 6, 8, 10 years to get through the process. It just, that's the issue with being involved with the federal project. But now that we're there, we're kind of at the finish line, and these easements were one of those last things to wrap up. And unfortunately, we didn't quite get the response that we wanted, and we're gonna. It's the county commission is going to have some decisions to make.
So Matt, are you able to say why the vote so much against? What's on the other hand?
Yeah, there's been 3 big issues that I've heard repeatedly. The erosion control line, you know, and what that is when you do a beach restoration project in Florida, again, whether it's federal sponsored or state sponsored, local sponsored, an erosion control line is established. And what that is where the mean high water line is prior to the project, that now becomes the bounding property, or the property boundary from those Gulf front property owners. Their deed currently reads, a lot of them, to the, at a certain bearing, certain distance to the mean high water line. So their property value changes every day, really. Well, that erosion control line would fix that boundary. So anything seaward of that where we place sand would become state property. not county property, it becomes state property. So that's a big pill for the property owners to swallow, and I fully understand that. The second issue was the sand quality, whether or not we would be able to place sand of the same character, you know, the white, beautiful sugar white sand that we all love so much. To overcome that uncertainty, we had planned to go out and take additional core samples from the Barrow site and have those available for the public to review, or for their own independent expert to come in and do geotechnical analysis if that would be required. That's going to be going in front of the county commission as well, I believe on March 8th. Is that correct? So the county commission will be making a decision on that. Personally, I would like to see that move forward, regardless, even if this project were to, you know, be modified or go away, whatever the case may be. I think there's still value in obtaining those cores. The cores that we had originally done, we spent $1 million doing the geotechnical analyses, mapping out hundreds of square miles of the Gulf to find, you know, the sand resource that we needed, both in size, quality, and quantity, and location. You know, it needed to be cost effective. Unfortunately, the cores that were taken for that project were destroyed. The geophysicists and geologists that were involved with the project, he passed away, his company was dissolved, and the cores that were in storage in his lab were just destroyed as well. So it's been over 10 years that we had done that study. It's just a very unfortunate circumstance there. So that was the point of going out and taking the additional cores. We just couldn't go back and review the data that was previously done. There was some other concerns regarding the cost. Is this something we really want to put, a burden we want to put on the taxpayer? Well, really, there is no burden on the taxpayer. It's split between the local county government. I believe the state cost funding share was 18 to 20%. The federal share was somewhere around 30%. And then the county would be left with picking up the remainder. But that would not be an assessment on the properties. That would not be assessment on county residents. It would solely be paid for by the TDC through the third penny.
It's one of the pennies.
Yes, there's a lot of pennies. It's the specific beach restoration penny. That penny was established for the management of Walton County shorelines, beach management. It has some other uses, but its primary purpose was originally beach restoration, and it was tapped for the 2006 Walton Destin project. So there would be no additional cost to north end property owner, a south end property owner. It's solely paid for by the TDC.
This is about a $20 million fund now, thereabouts.
I think we had 14 million in reserve, and we're pulling 4 million per year. That's what we pulled last year, and we just finished the debt service on the 2006 project. So yes, I believe there's somewhere between that 14 and 20 in the bank now, and then accruing at approximately 4 million a year. But you know, we anticipate that to grow.
For this specific fund.
That's that one penny, just that one penny, and there's 4 pennies that are divided for marketing and the other missions of the TDC.
And it seems that it's a sum of money that politicians want to get out there and take from what I read, to fund the sheriff's office and prohibitionist activities of the sheriff and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I wish Mr. Atkins was here. Basically, again, just in my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, and it takes one to interpret the rules of these pennies, but they each have their own specific use. So the penny that's taken for marketing can't be used for beach nourishment, and vice versa.
There actually are some pushes in other areas of the state, as well as state legislature, for some of the bed tax collections to be used for safety and health reasons. Currently, right now, not pushing Walton County for that. We have a we have been approved through a legislative finding to be able to fund our beach safety program. So we currently are operating with what we feel is a good mix of funding for different reasons that help our economy and our people that live here and people that visit here.
Hope you'll forgive my ignorance. And so what I'm hearing is we've got federal backing. They've finally taken their roundabout process, gotten it to the finish line, as you say. We have a considerable cash to actually implement this plan. And the last hurdle is just obtaining these easements, and the initial reaction to that comes down to the theme of, probably most importantly, the ECL.
Property
That's
rights.
the last major hurdle we would have to overcome to be able to go ahead and pull the trigger and start.
Yeah, I think we can do a lot of work, and we have done a lot of work to overcome the costs. You know, when Bagby was still here, we had done a presentation on, and he's much more well-versed, and other folks from the TDC are much more well-versed in the economics and the inner workings of the TDC than I am. But we made it very clear that the TDC could support the full funding of the project, both the initial project construction as well as through the 50-year term with that 1 penny. The sand quality, I think we can get that addressed by obtaining those samples, but that's a big hurdle to overcome the property rights. If you tell folks you're now going to draw that magical line in the sand, and there's nothing that the county nor the federal government can do about that. That is a state statute, that is a state law. And we've put it up on the website, their exact procedures and the reasoning. And basically, you know, we know the mean high water fluctuates, but anything below that belongs to the state, the peoples of the state. But it was I believe a Florida Supreme Court ruling that had said, if you are extending the beach and it wasn't this term, but in a sense, reclaiming that land seaward of that needs to stay within the property of the state. That needs to stay within the peoples of the state. Not only that, we're using a sand resource. We're going out and dredging material from state bottoms and using that as our borrow material for the beach. So that in itself is a state resource. So for all of those reasons, the state had upheld through the Supreme Court that for a beach restoration project, anywhere where you're modifying the mean high water line, an ECL will be drawn.
I guess to his point earlier about remunerating people for, you know, reestablishing, essentially what I'm hearing and what I've heard over the years is that the establishment of that ECL is the deal breaker for everyone. And so I guess to his point, asking about, have we considered it, you answered it from a federal standpoint, would the federal government be interested in participating or acquiescing in their funding portion to something like that? I guess the efforts at this point to get us over the finish line would be to, I guess, what's in place and what sort of funding do we have to either lobby or approach the state legislature for them to either clarify or modify, and then we know what a process that would even be to, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Calm people's fears about the erosion control line and the long-term, you know, property rights and values impact that that's going to have. And because that's something that's been a theme since the Okaloosa Island Supreme Court case with the cherries. I love the cherries. I used to like part with them, and she used to come out and fill my ear with it as it was going on. So I'm all about that. That's I mean, I guess, do we have any portion of that funding for this project that would be well spent towards dealing with the public and getting out to these 90%ers and both drawing them into the process so that it becomes plain language for them and making our efforts known to the state legislature so that any property rights that are affected and I guess bringing it to the fore, because we know this is a long process, and if we're that close, it doesn't seem like all of a sudden, I don't know what we could say or what the TDC can say at this point, being that it's a state's legislative issue, that
Right.
we can convince the 90% right now.
And I go ahead.
Well, in addition to I think there's a value to this easement, and I don't think the property owners are being compensated for. In addition to that, there's a property tax assessment that these folks are paying every year and have been paying as long as anybody can remember, assessments assuming that the beach was totally theirs. And there's no sense in any of this that would go down because they've signed away. The state's taking over this part of the property that makes their property so valuable to the tax assessor. And then they're going to continue in perpetuity endure this 50-year period to pay higher taxes when they don't own the beach anymore. So, they've got not only a value that they're not being compensated for with the easement, they're also paying taxes on property that is worth less than in the future. And that's a significant yearly expense for everybody.
I understand it. Let me just, before I
Yeah, and
bring my
if they
thought.
have to give up, rights, there are no bad guys here. It's just economics except the only bad guys I know of are the people coming real roll tide on the beach and getting drunk on your coffee. That's and then, you have the sheriff come in and give onerous requirements on the property owners to have trespassers removed. That cause a lot of friction and during the same time that we're trying to do these things.
Yeah,
And I think we could, with a plan B or a plan C, come up with significant reduction in the 90% off, and just a modest.
What about property tax offsets?
Yeah,
and
As
here's
a
something.
remuneration, do we have the legal authority to create an offset situation to help mitigate some of that NCL?
Well, let me give you a little history on how we tried to address that. And this goes back to even before I was involved, when Brad was still here. We had one of the deputy secretaries from DEP come over and explain the erosion control line establishment process, the reason for it, and how it would be established. We have to have a survey, a legal description. It has to be recorded in the county records. And there was the question of why do we have to do this? And can we just move forward with some other form of imaginary line in the sand? And we cannot do that. That's not even an option, because it's a state rule, it's state statute, it's been upheld by the Supreme Court. So the second one was, well, we need to make people very clear, there's some discussions regarding beach vending on county property, on public and private property. We tried our best to make that clear that just because this imaginary line is drawn in the sand, you're not going to be allowed to vend in that area. It's state property, it's not county property. Even if the county wanted to, they couldn't authorize folks to vend in that area. Additionally, there's ordinances such as for county property, you cannot vend unless you have the permission of the upland property owner. Is that correct? So we've tried our best to address those, and I think it's really just the uncertainty of what's going to happen to my property when that line gets drawn. Then we came back and we said, well, let's look at some examples of Walton County. Walton County is a great example. They have an ECL, Bay. They have an ECL and they're a federally established project. Have we seen a lot of increase in lower property values? Have we seen an increase in management concerns? Folks down there in the state area that you cannot control? There has been none. There was
nobody wants to be the test case.
Well, and I know there's a lot of issues with Bay County and spring break and all that kind of stuff too. Another thing that's muddied the waters, unfortunately. So then we came back and looked at Walton. We have an ECL established in Miramar Beach area from the Hilton all the way over to the county line, and it extends further into Destin all the way over to Topsail Hill. I can tell you half of those people don't even realize they have an erosion control line, and some of them had attended our public workshops and said, well, there's no way, and heck, you're putting a line on my property. Turns out there already was one there. The folks in Destiny East, a lot of them don't even know that line is there. And do they have management concerns with their beach vending? Do they have management concerns with unruly guests, that sort of thing? It's never come up. Have they lost values in their property? I really don't think so. I've seen them just go up and up and up. So if you look at those examples, I think we've addressed a lot of that, but I completely understand it's just the uncertainty of that initial nourishment and that drawing the line on your property. Well, their property is different. My property is a little different from that case, and I completely understand that, and that's the public perception problem that we have. And can we spend some more money out of the fund, the beach management fund, to go back and do an even more thorough education plan? Perhaps, but that would be a decision for the new executive director and the BCC, I would imagine. We can make recommendations, but I think that's about as far as we can go.
I just think that the problem is we've all seen it, perception is reality. And if there are enough people, you call them contrarian or whatever, but they have those concerns, they're not going to, they'll be the ones that show up and kick up the most dust, and those other people will remain blissfully unaware of the track record of success that's already having. So I don't mean to suggest that we just throw money at it, we just, hey, let's grab some money from here and throw it at it. I think it could go a long way towards, if the people who would otherwise be concerned feel acknowledged and they can be addressed like you're doing right now, and you can bring up those concrete examples and you can put some effort into just bringing it out into the open and explaining things, and then tying in your original points about the benefits of the matching funds that we do have, the local funds to support an 18 to 20% and the federal 30% support.
And we've actually done a lot of this for the past year. We've been holding this committee meeting, as well as a workshop that coincided with this meeting on the same day, and then the following day would be a workshop prior to the BCC meeting. So all of the points of the why the HSDR project was started, the benefits of it to the people that would be affected, meaning the citizens of Walton County, people who come here, people who live here, have been explained. And some of the things you brought up earlier are simply right now, they're Florida statute. And we're a small segment of Florida beaches. So, the state sets the statutes based on what they feel is best for all concerned for that component of state business. So I understand what you're saying, but I think at this point, we for this particular project have made an extreme effort to present the project in a very factual manner, and the BCC's position has always been to let the people decide what they would like to do. And in this case, it required a component of the people that would be most affected, the Gulfront property owners. And they have sent out a construction easement request that has been received back, and now the BCC will have to make a decision based on that return. And so that'll be a discussion at the March 8th meeting. I'm not sure if any action will be taken at that time, or if there'll be an opportunity to have more workshops for more discussion, because there probably should be more discussion about it. Right now, it's really, we're at a point now where our leaders of this county will have to make a decision on which way they would like for this project to proceed. And whatever decision they make, at that point, we'll go in that direction until that changes direction for whatever reason it may be. There's a lot of influences that could change that direction. It could be a change in understanding of the people that oppose it. It could be a change in understanding of the people that are for it. It could be an event. It could be a change in Florida statute. But there's so many dynamics that affect all of Florida that govern us because we are part of Florida. So it's not, unfortunately, it's not just a Walton County issue. It really is a whole state economy issue. And since the state beaches and ownership of those beaches is very different in different areas, we're sort of unique where we have a lot of property that does go to the main high water line. You know, neighboring counties have less of that, based on, you know, past, change in property ownership, development, practices, and, you know, it was, you know, back in the older days, our traditional beach neighborhoods were planted to the table then. We have a lot of property that is the former government lots that were decided in the 30s, late 20s, 30s, that the government no longer needed, and they put them up for auction. And in those, they weren't interested in building roads and utility ways, so they just partitioned the area into approximately 1 to 1.2 acre lots. And they put easements on typically the north and east or west side, depending on how the property adjoined the adjacent property. And those easements were intended for roadways, alleyways, and utility ways. And those were typically properties that go to the main high water line, because they were planted in a grid that went down. Occasionally you'll have a triangular piece of shaped land on the beach that didn't get sold off. It's what is referred to as a fractional portion of the township. And some of those end up being public beaches that were conveyed to the county. So that's where we ended up with properties to the main high water line versus property to the total dam. Once again, I think a symptom of being rural, unknown to most people. Back in the day, you know, they had a hard time selling lots here. It was a very unhospitable place to live, to be honest with you. So that's where we are. But so as Matt has indicated, you know, at this point we've gone through these processes. We've presented factual information for the people of Walton County to digest and make decisions on. The people most affected have answered our request for consideration for construction easement, and now the BCC has to make a decision on which way they would like to pursue.
What are their options?
Well, I don't want to speculate on what the BCC will do. I mean, we have, you know, they are, you know, a government body, you know, for the people. They're elected by the people, and you know, so I don't want to speculate on what their decisions would be. Their options is listen to the people for what the people have said. Maybe continue on with more educational efforts. And that, so those are our options. You know.
Does the subject of eminent domain apply here?
I don't believe anybody has ever discussed eminent domain. I don't think, once again, I'm not going to speculate on BCC, but they have never indicated that would be an option.
Okay.
Yeah, and for the federal government, that wouldn't be an option. The federal government cannot come in. Those easements are absolutely mandatory for the federal project to move forward. There are certain cases where a local government could do those things, but I have heard in BCC meetings, and this has gone back well over a year, there's never been any interest in the county going in and expressing those eminent domain or any similar options to construct a beach project.
Any other questions?
Probably because there's a just compensation portion to eminent domain that they're not interested in paying.
Yeah.
Once again, that would be speculation that is, you know, cannot be you know, put on the BCC. You know, I think they're fair in saying that we don't want to do them in the domain because we don't believe that is the right way to do it. I don't think it has anything to do with the component of compensation or not. Okay.
Any public question or comment? All right, well, thank you. Very lively discussion. Thank you very much.
Yeah, pleasure.
Okay, next order of business for us is any old business. Any old business before the committee? Seeing there is none, we'll proceed to, is there any new business before the committee? There is none.
There was new business, just to briefly mention something that may impact what we're doing here, is just a footnote about this beach mouse, a Choctawhatchee beach mouse, seeming to have a problem with what developers want to do Layton Beach State Park, some sort of construction. We know that there's a map or something that the feds seems to be
Yes, sir.
presenting to people that want to develop, and we might want to get hold of one of those maps if we can.
Yes, sir. We actually have it. It's available on the Walton County GIS system. If you go to their interactive map portal, you can turn on the layer that's called the White Sands Ordinance, and that domain coincides with the White Sands Ordinance. What the Fish and Wildlife has pointed out to Walton County is that not only is there a critical habitat zone for Chattahoochee beach mouse, and those zones have been identified, Great Beach, Topsail, Deer Lake, and maybe a few other small pockets that I'm not aware of. Those are the bigger areas. But in addition to critical habitat, there's also what is considered Chattahoochee beach mouse domain. And that is an area where the Chattahoochee beach mouse could live, but it has not been definitively determined that it is a critical habitat. Okay, so it is not necessarily a new thing by the Fish and Wildlife. They just wanted to remind Walton County that this domain does exist, and that for Walton County to politely remind people that are doing construction, be it new or renovation in this zone, that there also is a component that the Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service would like to, or needs to review the project in order to make sure that they are not in a situation where there is a take, which is with that or destroying habitat. So that's what it is. I don't think it's not necessarily new. It was just a reminder that this does exist, and
affect beach restoration.
would that affect the beach restoration? That's all been handled in the environmental permitting, correct, Matt?
Yeah, there's been a number of assessments done for not only beach mouse, turtles, sturgeon, every threatened, endangered, or potentially listed species. But those assessments have all been done. And what they result in, what they're asking for is come to us for a permit so we can give you the best management practices to avoid that take, or to minimize the potential for that take. So, real quick, does the domain coincide with the white sand ordinance or the critical habitat?
The domain, the way I understand it is the domain coincides with the White Sands Ordinance. Like I said, that layer is available on the GIS maps. You can go in there. It's fairly easy to go through. It's an interactive map. It's got some menus on the side. It's got some different layers you can turn on. Turn on that layer, it'll cross-hatch the area. Typically, it is Scenic Gulf Drive, south of. As you progress east, where it hits 98, it is then south of 98. And then when you get back to 38, it is south of 38. And when you get back to 98 on the east end, it is then south of 98 till you get to the Bay County line. So, it is the area that's pretty much the dune system. In some of those areas, it's a little deeper. But typically those areas we're talking about on 98, in between 38 and Scenic Gulf Drive is primarily the Topsail Hill State Park, Preserve, as well as the Topsail Hill community. And then Great Beach has a critical habitat. Most of it's contained within the St. J community watercolor, south of 38. So anyway, it's like I say, it's not a new thing. It's just a reminder that this does exist. And I believe it was spurred on by some complaints of some construction being done, renovation projects being done in Great Beach property.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to add something on new business.
Sure.
At the first of our first meeting, I had alluded to that this committee has been consumed with HSDR. Since we're at a point in HSDR where it is now sort of out of our arena as far as any recommendations or discussion, other than just information discussion, we have other things that we deal with. And that's beach management in general. And so what is beach management? Beach access, beach vendors, other stuff that happens on the beach. So I'm forward that y'all think about it for the next couple of weeks. get out and about in your community. Definitely attend this March 8th meeting so that you can be aware firsthand, and there will be much more discussion about this. And make yourself aware. You can go to our website, Visit South Walton. We have a beach nourishment tab on there that has all the maps, all the information presented to this date, and it can really give you more information so that you can be informed and make your own decision and all that. But importantly, let's start doing what our mission is, and that's beach management and how to effectively spend TDC tax dollars that are associated with beach management on our beaches to make them a better place. This sort of coincides with our Destination Improvement Committee, which is solely concerned with making this destination improve. It coincides because what is our attraction? The beach. So our task is okay, destination improvement comes up with nice, pretty ideas. We come up with operational ideas. And what we think would be good, beach management practices for the beaches of Walton County. And so when we're saying this, we're talking about, the public beaches and how we interact on that. Codes that may affect all the beaches. Municipal codes do have effect on private property and how you can manage your private property. So we have some beach-related codes, and all of those are contained in Chapter 22 of the Municipal Code. So I encourage y'all to read those and be aware of that's called Chapter 22. And all you got to do is type in Walton County Municipal Code in your browser. It will come up to the Muni Code webpage. They have all of our chapters, and Chapter 22 is waterways and beaches. So not only does it affect the beach, but some of our water bodies that we also deal with. And get out and about. Go to our beach accesses. Look at them. Take stock of what we have. Discuss with people that use them to help you gain ideas of what does the general public want from Walton County's public beaches. And that way we can have some ideas and we can fulfill our mission of helping the TDC effectively spend tax dollars on beach management issues. And also carry that to the bay. We have two beautiful bay accesses, Hogtown and Legion Park. Legion is somewhat older. It's one of our older wayside parks. It's nice. It's over there just to the west of the Ace Hardware. You turn that road and go back a couple blocks. Hogtown or Cessna Park is on Highway 393 north, a couple miles up. Beautiful bay access. We have a lot of facilities there, a kids park, some handball courts, restrooms, excellent docks, and picnic pavilions. And we also have some other minor bay accesses that are really parks. There's a Hagen Park. We have another park called the Kellogg property, which is off of Hartsvet Road. We're developing a new canoe and kayak launch over here on, what is it, Wilson Street? No. It's the last road. It's the last road.
Oh, Mitchell.
Mitchell. It's a small piece of land the county owns that we're developing into a canoe and kayak launch. So like I say, get out and about, assess what the county owns and what they have. And at our next meeting, I'd like to see some new business on beach management committee. We think that this is an item that needs to be addressed. And we appreciate consideration by the TDC. Of course, we'll discuss it here. We'll come to a collective agreement on if it moves forward, if it has merit or not. And then it goes to the TDC. TDC has two functions. They are an advisory committee to the BCC, and they have a fiduciary responsibility for the pay tax collections. So, if it makes it out of our committee, it'll go to that committee, and then if it makes it out there, it'll go to the BCC for consideration. BCC has final approval over expenditures by the pay tax collections, and since a lot of the stuff that we make decisions on is county-owned property, that of course would have the last decision on it. So, anyway, I don't want this to be a waste of our time. I want people that have agreed to participate get a feeling that their efforts are appreciated and their decisions are used. But in order to do that, we have to go out and do it. You know, we have to develop ideas based on that mission statement. I'm going to send this back out to everybody, as well as the opening that I led with at our first meeting that detailed, in particular, these several items that we should be dealing with besides HSDR. So look for that coming out with probably on Monday. Stacy will have the meeting minutes published mid-week. We'll have to get them out within a week so that you can review them. And I encourage you to make notes then. And then so when we come back in the next time, you already have your notes if there's any changes that need to be made to the meeting minutes and all that. That's what I have about new business.
Excellent, thank you, Brian. Very much appreciated. Invite the public for any comment or questions for the committee.
Actually, do you have a question? So if the homeowners say they don't want the easements, what is their plan for restoration, beach restoration, and
The individual homeowners?
yeah, if they come back with an alternative?
We've not heard any alternatives presented by the homeowners, at least I haven't specifically. Lisa, chime in if I'm wrong.
It's the belief of most homeowners that I've had contact with that in the past, including Opal, Dennis, Ivan, whatever, that the beachfront owners have paid for their own restoration and repairs, and they don't see that anything's any different. Their feeling is just like with any other piece of property you may own anywhere, that if it's your property, it's your responsibility. And so that's been their viewpoint pretty much all along. And I know there may be people that have made comments about beachfront owners wanting handouts. And I'm not going to say there have been none, because I'm certainly not privy to what every beachfront owner in this county has or has not received. But I do know that the ones that have spoken aloud in these public meetings that Matt and Brian have referred to are people that have paid for their own repairs, their own dune renourishments, their own plantings, etc.
Yeah, so it's very difficult to estimate, because if you were to go out now as a homeowner and say, I want to do a dune restoration, it's a very difficult permitting process. You typically have to hire an engineer, you have to have your sand pre-approved, it's got to be permitted with the state, you have to go to the beach, the Fish and Wildlife Commission, have them address it. After a hurricane, if there is an emergency declared, then you can, what was previously done was there was an emergency authorization, and it fast-tracked all of those processes, the permitting process basically. The issue that I foresee, and a lot of folks have installed temporary seawalls. Those were only supposed to be in for 6 months and then removed. Some chose to remove them. Other property owners chose the option of permitting them as permanent structures. If that facilitates more and more, seawalls can have an environmentally detrimental effect on the beach system. So that's something that the county does not want to encourage. And there's been new rules put within the codes to where they have to have an opinion from an engineer that certifies that the seawall is not going to have any adverse effect on not only the ecosystem but also the beach system, their neighboring properties. That's going to be very difficult. And then secondly, bringing the sand onto the beach, even as few as 5-10 years ago, we had a lot more open property where we could bring in trucks and access the beach, whereas now those properties are fewer and farther between. So how do we get tens of thousands of cubic yards out onto the beach without destroying sea turtle habitat, beach habitat, getting access agreements amongst neighboring properties, or We saw one property that had to bring in a conveyor system that conveyed it around the houses and then shot the sand onto the dune. It can all be done, but it just becomes that much more expensive. But I've heard the same thing that Lisa has, is that, you know, a lot of these homeowners just, we've done it ourselves, we've managed our property, but we just want folks to be fully educated on the rules, that it may be a little bit more difficult now than it was previously.
And Matt, you know, it may end up that it is. One of the things, though, as you pointed out, is during the emergency times, there's a good bit of latitude given to do repairs and mitigate, you know, further damages that can occur because you don't do the repairs. So I think if I recall correctly, at one point I actually asked Brad Pickle if we counted on beach renourishment and so forth from the 50-year project, how long could we expect it to take before our renourishment would be done? And at that time, now it could be different now, but he told me 2 years. Well, no beachfront owner that I know is going to wait 2 years to start mitigating those damages. And I think, you know, I think that's where there's a number of issues, and Matt did a really good job of outlining most of them. There's a little more detail that I could go into, but basically, as Brian said, this is already done. It's a matter of what the BCC decides to do with it. But that's the big thing with beachfront owners, is they feel like, you know, it's my property, whether I own it on a lake or inland somewhere or on the beach or wherever. It's my responsibility, so I have to fix it.
All right, seeing that there's no other business or public comment, thanking everyone. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion?
In a second? All in favor? None opposed? We are officially adjourned. Our next meeting is on May the 3rd, approximately 2 months. Thank you again, everyone.
Thanks everybody for coming. Maurice, appreciate you filling in. For the chair.